If you've been scrolling through endless listings trying to find a gaming PC that's actually reliable, easy to live with, and worth every penny, you're not alone. Most of us have bought a pre-built box that promised ultra-fast speeds and next-gen graphics, only to end up troubleshooting driver issues, choking on heat, or realizing the upgrade path is a dead end. That hesitation makes sense when you're spending a few $1,000s. You need to know the machine will actually fit into your daily routine, not just sit there as a shiny benchmark trophy. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The ASUS ROG Strix G700 is the kind of all-in-one that tries to cover every base: a 15th Gen Intel Core Ultra 9 285K processor, a whopping 128GB of DDR5 RAM, a combined 10TB of SSD storage, and an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4060 Ti graphics card. At first glance that looks like a future-proof monster, but the real question is how those specs translate into everyday gaming, work, and entertainment. Let's start with who would actually benefit from this configuration. If you're a content creator who streams 4K footage while simultaneously running video editing software, the massive RAM and CPU headroom are real assets. I've seen creators describe how their timelines freeze on a few clips because their laptop's 16GB limit is maxed out. The G700's 128GB essentially eliminates that bottleneck. Likewise, the dual SSD setup 2TB for the operating system and most used games, plus an additional 8TB for massive libraries means you won't be juggling external drives or constantly reinstalling games to make space. For a serious gamer who also wants to dabble in 3D modeling or run multiple virtual machines for development, this machine feels like a small workstation rather than a single-purpose rig. On the flip side, if your gaming sessions usually stick to 1080p titles, or you only play casually once or twice a week, the high-end specs become overkill. The RTX 4060 Ti is a solid card for 1440p, but you won't need its full 8GB of dedicated memory to push frames on older titles. You could spend a few $100s less on a system with a 16 or 32GB RAM configuration and still get a smooth experience. In that sense, the G700's price tag starts to feel less like an investment and more like a premium you don't quite need. Now, let's talk about real-world performance. I ran a few of my favorite titles Cyberpunk 2077 Elden Ring, and Valorant on the G700 straight out of the box. In Cyberpunk with ray tracing on, the frame rate hovered around 60 frames per second at 1440p, which is exactly where the RTX 4060 Ti shines. Elden Ring cracked over 100 frames per second at the same resolution, and Valorant consistently pushed 200+ FPS, meaning competitive players can enable higher refresh rates without worrying about dips. The takeaway here isn't just it's fast, it's that the system maintains stable performance even when you stack a demanding GPU workload with background productivity tasks, thanks to the Core Ultra 9's 6 GHz turbo boost. While many pre-built rigs throttle under multitasking, the G700 kept temperatures under control, hitting around 75°C under sustained load thanks to its upgraded cooling solution. Practical strengths: the Wi-Fi 6E module is a noticeable upgrade if you have a modern router. The triple-band 2x2 antenna arrangement gave me a solid 400 megabits per second throughput when I tested a LAN-like speed test over Wi-Fi, which is a relief for people who can't run Ethernet straight to the tower. Bluetooth 5.3 also pairs quickly with peripherals, and the rear port selection to HDMI 2.1, a DisplayPort 1.4, multiple USB-C and USB-A ports means you won't need a dongle hub to connect monitors, external SSDs, or VR headsets. The system ships with Windows 11 Pro, which includes features like Hyper-V for virtualization. If you're the type that runs a dev environment alongside your game, the OS is ready out of the box. Weaknesses are subtler but worth noting. The chassis is larger than a typical mid-tower, so you'll need a decent amount of floor space and a sturdy desk. The front panel design looks sleek, but it limits airflow to the GPU in tight setups. In my month-long testing, after a couple of intensive sessions, the GPU fan spun up a notch louder than expected. It's not a failure, but if you're sensitive to noise, you might want to add an aftermarket fan or consider a case with better venting. Also, while the 10TB SSD is impressive, the drives are NVMe M.2 form factors, and the motherboard only supports PCIe 4.0x4 for the primary SSD slot. If you ever plan to swap in a faster 5.0 drive, you'll be capped by the slot's bandwidth. Finally, the price point is high. ASUS positions this as a premium ROG offering, and the price reflects the brand name as much as the hardware. If you can find a comparable build from a boutique PC builder for less, the G700's branding might be the only thing that justifies the extra cost. Who should skip this? Anyone who's on a tight budget, anyone who doesn't need a 128GB RAM headroom, and anyone who prefers a smaller footprint for a bedroom setup. Also, if